Tell me we look comfortable. This is great. I feel like I'm on the Johnny Carson. For you younger guys, Jimmy somebody. Let me tell you what we have in store for you tonight. You see the microphones here, and you see the green paper in front of you. This is described as just a casual chat. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off a little bit.
They're recording at PCs are not allowed.
Think of anything you want to ask if you haven't already done so. And you can do it one of two
This
ways.
is a big classroom.
You can write on a green piece of paper, and we have people that pick those up and put them here. Or, if you're not shy, you can go up to one of the two mics and ask your question yourself. I see a lot of advocates, so I don't see a lot of shy people out there. So that's how we do it. Let me introduce General Suter, General Bill Suter from the court. And I feel a little awkward sitting here with Bill because I think our military careers overlap at about 20 years. And General Suter has had two careers, either one of which we would all die for. The first career was in the Army, and Bill had some incredible jobs. He was in Vietnam as deputy staff advocate. People know about it. He served, and I'm just going on around your career, I'm not trying to go in order. But he served with General Wicklow, became chief of staff of the Army. Served with another person you may have heard of, Colin Powell. Served with Colin Powell, who did pretty well for himself. And so he's made other people look pretty good all his life and hadn't done too badly for himself either. We might want to hear a little bit about your escapades with Elvis.
Yeah, the man what he is.
Yeah, with Elvis. But had a full career that I don't know what you would consider the culmination of your career, but became a major general in the Army and was, I believe you were appointed by Conway for general, and then moved, was assistant judge advocate general of the Army, and was acting judge advocate general of the Army as the senior person in the Army Judge Corps. Then afterwards, retired at, I think, 91, I believe, in the Army, and was kind of looking around for something else to do. And some guys, Chief Justice Rehnquist may have heard of him as well, hand selected him to be the clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court. And he served there ever since. And the second longest service, fourth longest service, 19 years. And has just had, as I said, two incredible careers. So one day I'm reading that he's going to retire on August 31st. And I said, oh my, I have to advance my timetable a little bit. And so I called and said, can you put us on your farewell tour if you have one? And so he agreed to come down and give the commencement speech, which we'll be doing tomorrow. But being the Army general that he is, he said, you know, I'm coming down on your nickel, put me to work. And so he did. And so I said, well, how about something like this? And he said, absolutely, be delighted to do it. As you can see, when he doesn't need the stage, I do. He's had both athletic and academic scholarships. Sports scholarship for basketball to go to college, and then an academic scholarship to go to law school. So he's the full package. So I wanted, if I might, I'd like to start off by, I'm going to wait on Elvis. We'll let somebody else ask about Elvis. But I would like to ask, I noticed that at least in one source that I had, and actually, that reminds me, before I ask the question, I want to just, I'm getting embarrassed the heck out of you, I think. But I want to, Washington, D.C. is kind of a power-hungry book. And I want to ask if anybody knows anyone who's retired with this kind of a right. An earthquake of sorts struck Capitol Hill last week, though many working in that seat of government were unaware of it. The U.S. Supreme Court announced that William Suter, retired Army Major General, was stepping down after 22 years as clerk. The court announcement of his looming retirement didn't really do him justice. More than any other official, Suter brought the Supreme Court into the 21st century, bringing logic and organization to the process of taking a case to the court. So this article later on said that you were handpicked by Justice Rehnquist, Chief Justice Rehnquist. And so my first question is, what was the process of coming out of the Army and being decided or undecided of what your next move would be and being handpicked by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court?
Don, thank you for inviting me here. I was last at this school as a captain in the Army in 1968. I was down here recruiting for the JAG Corps. I was very warmly received. We were in the middle of the Vietnam War. I hadn't been to Vietnam yet, but warmly received at this school. I don't remember much about it, except I remember the dean was very friendly and the students were friendly, and I snagged a few. Kept them from going into the Navy, of course, and came into the Army. Actually, what happened, I was nearing the end of my Army career. You know when that's coming. And I started looking for jobs with my wonderful wife helping me, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think a lot of 3Ls are the same way. And so are the 2Ls, and especially the 1Ls. They're curious about everything, and clueless about everything. But I wondered what I wanted to do, and I got my resume ready and did this and that. And someone called my wife, and a retired general's wife, and said, I saw in the paper that the clerk of the Supreme Court is retiring. That would be a great job for Bill. Of course, my sweet wife said, honey, that would be a great job for you. And I told her, I said, Janie, those jobs are all tied up. Politics, the doorkeeper of the Senate, all that kind of stuff. And she says, oh, you know somebody down there. Well, one thing led to another, and I found out they are looking for someone. Sometimes those are set-up deals. So I sent in my application. Nothing happened. I was then accepted as a special counsel to an out-of-town corporation. Again, I had no idea what I was doing, but it was a friend of mine. And that's your best asset when you're looking for a job. 3 assets, really. Your friends, and your friends. So my heart really wasn't in it, but at least it was a very good job, a very well-paying job, and I didn't have to move. Then I get a notice to come down to the court and be interviewed. And I was interviewed by Justices O'Connor, Kennedy, and Scalia. So before I went, a few weeks before that, my sweet wife said, honey, I'm taking you out to Nordstrom's. You need to get dressed. I've got a clothing consultant for you. Oh, what? I've just seen that movie, Father of the Bride. Remember Frank, the wedding consultant? And I said, I'm not doing that. So we go to the Nordstrom's. We get there, and this fellow walks up and says, you must be General and Mrs. Suter. I said, yes, sir, that's right. How did you know? He said, you look like a general and you're on time. It was 2 o'clock straight up. Military people are never late. We're just not. It's a court-martial offense if you're late. In today's dollars, I spent $6,000 that day and got the suits. Will Rogers once said, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So I'm all geared up, and I go down for my interview with these 3 justices. I interviewed for an hour. It was a very friendly conversation. They're just lovely people. At the end of it, Justice O'Connor, the senior of the other 2, stood up and said, well, thank you for coming today. That's a lovely suit. So somehow of all the applicants, they voted on me, and then she took the final round and bullied the other 6 into voting for me. And the very next day, got a call to come down and meet with Chief Justice Rehnquist. He offered me the job. We're sitting in front of his little fireplace, just Chief Justice Rehnquist, Justice O'Connor, and myself. And she said, you know, Chief, the real reason Bill wants this job, and I thought, boy, if my family could only hear this now. God, I'm at the top of the heap. And he says, why, Sandra? Why does he really want the job? He says, so he can continue his basketball career here at our basketball court. Well, we do have a basketball court at the Supreme Court. You've heard this joke before? From the top floor, it's the highest court in the land. So I took the job, but 2 weeks later, there I am, again, clueless, clerk of the Supreme Court. Really honored to be there. I should pay them. It was so much fun. And anybody can do what I did. Any of you can. I know he can, because he can do anything. But it's been very enjoyable. So I sort of fell into the job and backed out of the other job that I had sort of consented to. My friend said, fine, you'll be better off at the Supreme Court. He said, I would do the same thing. So it's a wonderful place to work. We really thrive on two things up there, tradition and discipline. The same things we had in the military. And there are two good things to thrive on as a lawyer and in the legal profession. We have our tradition. Judges and justices wear robes. You go to court, you do this or that. You have the same titles, plaintiff, defendant, and so forth. And then you also have discipline. And that is that you're supposed to do your work and get it done on time and do it right. So that appealed to me very much, and that's how I sort of fell into the job.
One thing I know from my own experience is that General Suter is just a wonderful person to new counsels who have gone to practice before the Supreme Court, arguing before the Supreme Court for the first time, really to make sure that they make their best impression by taking them under his wing and explaining what's about to happen. Did the same thing for me when we were up there last week, and I said, I'm not quite fancy. We got a script, don't worry. Here's how you go through it, here's where you sit, here's where you stand, don't worry about it, just make your motion and go granted. You did tell me afterwards it was 5-4, I'm sorry. You were it was close to get you admitted into the court. But I did have a question that someone gave me that they wanted me to ask of you, and that is, what do you do? What does the clerk of the Supreme Court do?
Every court has a clerk, as you well know. Trial courts, appellate courts. I get to travel around the world to a certain extent, and I always visit foreign courts. The Supreme Court of Canada, for instance, the clerk there is called the registrar. Some places they're called administrator. I would say 90% around the world are called clerks. Pennsylvania, which is in the United States, they call their clerk the profanatory. Try saying that 10 times. It's a very long word. But my favorite was Brazil. I was there, and the clerk of the Supreme Court is called the Secretary General. I'd move down there just for that title. What a great job. So what the clerk does is what any other clerk does. We're the conduit between the judges and justices on our court and the bar or the public. You got to go see the clerk. You're all lawyers, law students, you know that. You have to see the clerk or a deputy or case intake or somebody to file your documents and so forth. So we are not just shuffling papers either. We do a lot of the work on the procedural issues of the court and take petitions that are filed, 8,000 cert petitions a year, the briefs in opposition, the motions, the applications, all those things. It's all on electronic docket, and get everything ready for the justices so they have very little paperwork to do, them and their 4 law clerks each, and anticipate what needs to be done, and then manage the cases. Of those 8,000 petitions we get, we only grant about 75. And then they have briefs on the merits, and then, of course, arguments in the courtroom, and then an opinion. Now, oddly enough, people think that the pro se's that are out there, like Gideon versus Wainwright, remember him? You think, well, that was the last one. Actually, this term, which we're ending right now, we had 75 grants. 2 were filed by pro se petitioners. They weren't criminal cases. They were civil cases. The Federal Tort Claims Act. Now, one was a prisoner in Pennsylvania, but no one would help him. So he filed his, we should have had one of your clinics. He filed his case in the U.S. District Court and lost. He appealed to the 2nd Circuit. He lost there, the 3rd Circuit. And then petitioned us. We granted it. We appointed an attorney to represent him. We appointed a professor of law. And by the way, we paid them no fees. Nothing. He got transportation from Philadelphia to D.C. and back, one night in a hotel, and we paid for 3 meals or something like that. We're very generous on this because we're getting hired for nothing. But we paid for printing the brief. But the lawyers are so good in this country, they'll take a case like that and do all the work, write the brief, argue the case, and we pay them really nothing. And I think it's good for professors to do that because I think they take that experience back to the courtroom, to the classroom. I think it's very important for the students to see something like that. Again, that's why your clinics are so good too. The other fellow was a retired sailor who was not in prison, but probably should have been. Out in Guam, who said that the VA, the Navy hospital out there botched his eye operation. And again, a Federal Tort Claims Act case, he's not a prisoner, not criminal law. He filed, he lost, he even lost in the Ninth Circuit. How do you do that? And we granted the case, and again, appointed someone to represent him. Both of them won their cases. And I'm just kind of surprised, the press didn't pick up on this. The press sometimes, is the press here tonight? Good. Oh, you are? Okay. Where are you from?
Texas.
Good, yes, I'm fine, nice to have you here. Sometimes the press can be a little lazy. Not you. You're working hard, I can see you out there. And, I would think that some journalists would pick up on this, and I think somebody is. I talked to a reporter the other day. She flew to Guam, to give him credit, it's a nationally known reporter. She flew all the way out there to interview this fellow, to do a follow-up story. I think that's good journalism. Probably not going to sell the story that day, but I think for the legal community, they should see this fellow should have had a lawyer. And he finally got one, but he had to go all the way to the Supreme Court to get one. And I'm not saying that anything wrong has happened. He's now got to try his case on the merits, and it doesn't look so good, but we'll see what happens. He'll get counsel now, I'm sure. But there was at least one good follow-up story on that. But again, the clerk in a deal like that, not me myself, but somebody has to help these people. We don't help them on the merits. But when you get a call from one of my assistants next October, you file a petition at the Supreme Court, you're sitting here in big Houston, thinking what's going on up there. You get a call, sir, your case was granted this morning. First thing you do is you faint. Then you call back, you think he's pulling a trick on you. If you're a rookie, you've never been there before, we hold your hand all the way through. You have one point of contact. I learned this in the Army. People would say something. So why do you think you have 90 days to file? You only have 60 days. Who told you you had 90? Somebody at the jail told me. Who was it? Oh, no. And you don't blame them, but you should have only one point of contact. So when you call us next time, you talk to Denise, nobody else. If she doesn't know, she calls you back and so forth. We send you a care package, and we have a dial care service. You wake up wondering, 4 o'clock in the morning, what am I going to do? So you call us and leave a message, you'll get a call right back. We want you to come and be successful. Not on the merits, but get everything done. We even tell you what to wear. We advise you on your clothing. And people from LA need help. I just mean they come with psychedelic ties on and things like that, so we have to really calm them down and tell them you're at the Supreme Court. And they do. People come up there, they don't want to be a fashion statement, they really want to represent their client. And I'll say this, after sitting through 1,700 arguments in the courtroom, sitting in the courtroom, I am so impressed with the legal profession. The quality of the briefs, the quality of the argument, top flight. Absolutely top flight. And the attorneys are ladies and gentlemen. They're professionals. They're on time. They never try to slip one by you. They just don't do things like that. Be proud of your profession. These people are really good. And this is across the board. Big Diamond Box, Texas, if there is such a place. I think there is. To Waukegan, from here to there, they come in there, especially the rookie now, and you've never been there before, but we get you up there a few days early. We take you in the courtroom, put you on the front row, let you watch a case. We take you in the courtroom when it's empty, let you get up and feel the lectern. You're just about 5 feet from the court. I like to say they can reach out and put a rid of habeas grabs on you. You are really, some courts are 40, 50 feet away. Up there, Ron, he just did it last Monday. He was there, made that motion. It was a great motion. Well, and a number of graduates of this fine school were admitted to practice right there on the spot. One about 10 motions right there. But we really want you to be successful in that regard. And the other attorneys, if you're going up against somebody, some Ted Olson with 60, 70 cases under your belt, they're also kind to you. They don't consider you as the enemy. There's a fellow named Seth Waxman, who was one of the Solicitor General under President Clinton. Seth's a very fine D.C. lawyer. He has more than 50 cases under his belt up there. But after he'd been the Solicitor General, he was back in private practice. He was arguing a case one day, and his opponent was at the lectern, and he was seated right beside the lectern. And his opponent was asked a question. What page is that on in the joint appendix? And the justice asked the question. Where she started looking through a 1,000-page document. You ever get this cold chill down your back, and you can't find it? Seth had him open to the correct page and slowly just put it up under her nose so she could see it. Now, for law students, that was the opponent he did that for. So not the enemy, your friends. You'll have a lot more fun in life with the law if you consider your opponent your friend. So the clerk gets involved in the rules, prescribing the rules of court, setting the argument calendar. We doing disciplinary action against attorneys and so forth, so it's a little bit of everything. I don't write the opinions, but we do everything with the law that's below that. That was a long answer, sorry.
That's great. One of the things, I have two questions from the audience, and I'm going to take them in reverse order. The second one reminds me when I was talking about all the things that General Suter has done. He ran the Army JAG School as one of his tours. And so, and you've also been to so many law schools and seen the schools, seen their facilities, given remarks, very generous. Well, this question goes back to the Army days. What future do you see for the Army and the JAG Corps? There are reports that the active force will be cut to almost 300,000 soldiers. Can that happen?
It's the will of Congress, and Congress carries out the will of the people. We're supposed to. And we've gone up and down before. After World War II, we reduced the military strength down to almost nothing. When we had the so-called police action in Korea, we were ill prepared. The enlisted soldiers, non-commissioned officers, the average education was 6th grade. We had some real problems over there, and we let it go down. We ramped back up for Vietnam, then we ramped back down again, knowing there'd never be another war, then back up again, and so it goes up and down. Look, there were many senior officers in World War II, including President Eisenhower, MacArthur, and others, who were general officers that reverted back to the grade of lieutenant colonel. They don't do that anymore. That'd be kind of hard to walk around as a general one day. A few days later, you're a lieutenant colonel. Those people were committed to military service. They enjoyed it, and they were committed to the defense of our nation. It's right there in the Constitution. So sometimes it's not all gravy. You know that, because you were a boat driver too. It's not all fun all the time, although you have to look back and say, it seemed like fun. So sure, it's going to go up and down, and I think the future is, look, I said somebody the other day, I told them, that there's only one place where success comes before work, and that's in the dictionary. So you got to get out there and work, and not be guaranteed that you're going to be a full colonel in the military or a captain or anything like that. If you enjoy your work, you're going to enjoy the military. And I think being a JAG officer is one of the best things you can do. Competition's very keen right now to get an appointment, but I have a little side job, not really a job, but an avocation of helping people find jobs that are judge advocates that have been in 4 years, 5 years, 10, 20, 30. We run a program once a year, just us JAGs in Washington, called Jobs for JAGs. It's a one-day seminar to tell you how to get dressed. Yes, an orange juice comes and helps us. We show you how to write interviews, how to do interviews, how to write resumes. It's something we've never done before. I can help place some 29-year-old who has 4 years in the JAG quickly. Firms, businesses, trade associations, jobs that they never even thought of out there are open. And you know why they want these people? 2 reasons. This is just Bill Suter, your friend, talking to you. They have experience. And second, they have leadership abilities. I think that's what you really gain in the military. Not that you can't gain it someplace else, like the Department of Health and Education, all these other departments and things. I think you can do it. You can do it in a law firm. But in the military, you get responsibility very quickly. I think I was 26 years old, Jenny, when I was prosecuting a triple murder in Alaska. I mean, you get responsibilities quickly, and you got to rise to the occasion. So then they are worth a lot when they get out. I helped somebody very recently now. She happened to be a brigadier general. She was the first brigadier general, female in the Army. She retired and wasn't working, wasn't doing anything. One thing led to another. She's now the executive director of the American Inns of Court. What a fantastic job. What a great job she's doing with all the inns that are all over the country, managing and putting all that together. I have another fellow I helped a guy out. He's the government liaison to the National Association of District Attorneys. I didn't know there was a National Association. There's a National Association of everything. There's one that's called National Association of Attorneys General. Ever heard of that one? AAG. Your Attorney General right here, Greg Abbott, is a member of that. They also call it NAG, N-A-A-G. They call it the National Association of Aspiring Governors. You don't put that down. But it's a little joke we have. It's called all state AGs want to be the governor, and a lot of them make it. So I still think government service and military service are great for any young person or older person coming out of law school, and the opportunities they're there. Law firms, it seems, have cut back and drawing back. Everybody's drawing back a little bit. It's just the nature of the economy and what's going on in this country. But I would say the fear that the military is going to shrink is not a reason to not move forward and travel and appoint them in the military.
I know there was a book going through your answer about the military shrinking and not being prepared, but when I was at the Army JAG school, one of the officers there gave me a book on that kind of war. And if you want to read a sad a book about our lack of preparation for Korea, I think that's one of the saddest that I've ever seen. Well, one of the things that you said, we know, and I know the young lady you're talking about because she was on the committee, legal assistance for military.
Yep, Lamb.
She was on that as well, so these folks never quit giving back and trying to help. But this leads to the other question that was presented on cutbacks. How is sequestration affecting the court? We know it's a problem for the local.
I'm not going to speak for the court here, but I'll just say that the court is very well managed. And think about this, the Supreme Court has one line item in the budget. You can look this up, you can Google it, it's about $74 million a year. That's the whole Supreme Court. All the lower courts, all the circuit courts, the district courts, bankruptcy courts, think of all that it was on interpreters, bailiffs, defendant services, I mean, you have all these things going on. I think that's maybe $7 billion. You've got courtrooms to grant them. That's a huge business. It's much more difficult to manage. They're having some difficulties with the budget. Our court is not, because it's small, and about 85% of our budget is for salaries and benefits. Look, no one's running for office. We don't have to travel. Our court is right there. We're very austere, as a matter of fact. We don't blow money on things. We're in on our budget all the time. We went through a 10-year renovation, and it's done. It's on time. It's amazing. The justices, again, remember I told you, discipline and tradition. So the discipline is you don't spend more than you bring in, and spend as little as you can. So we're very tight. It's the small force. That whole Supreme Court. Look, we've been in the same building since 1935, and we've dug a hole in the ground, put in a bigger basement for some parking and things. But that's it. And it's only about 450 people, 475 maybe. That includes our own police force, our own painters, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, printing. We do everything right in the same building right there. We want to be very independent, which assures you of an independent judiciary. You don't have to lean on the other two branches of government for help, except two things: appointment of a new justice when one dies or retires, and budget every year. In Congress, for us, the budget is fine. So it's not really a problem if you're disciplined. And the chief and the justices make us stay disciplined. We have committees. We have to stay in line.
Well, I have a lot of questions now. And a few of them harken back to prior answers. Generally, you mentioned two pro se parties were granted writs of cert and had attorneys appointed. What was the basis for the appointment?
I think some people think that we have, like in local courts, a big list of panel attorneys, like CJA, Criminal Justice Act attorneys and so forth. We appoint very few counsel. And if we do, it usually means it's a criminal case coming out of the Fifth Circuit, let's say, and you've already got a Criminal Justice Act attorney appointed. They make a motion for appointment and appoint that same attorney. So there's really no way you're going to write me. I get letters all the time. Please put me on the list. I want to be appointed. What happens is the circuit justice is responsible for finding an attorney who will volunteer to do it. The court agrees, and that attorney, with his or her consent, is appointed. We also do something that's unusual. Sometimes, particularly with the United States, Solicitor General will win in a circuit court. The petition comes up to us, and they change position and say, we should not have won that case. This is all lawyer. This is not political. This just says, one of them was the Miranda issue a number of years ago. They said, we shouldn't have won that case. One more Miranda issue. The name of the case was Dickerson. And it was in the, probably about 1998, something like that. And the government says we should not have won that case. We actually appoint an attorney to to represent the judgment of that court. You shouldn't let a court issue a judgment and let it just hang there naked and just go down the drain, I guess. I never heard of this before. We actually appoint an attorney to argue the case, brief and argue the judgment of that court, to be sure we show respect for the court. But there's no way you can kind of get on the list. It's done, there are very few. So it's not a problem.
So whoever asked that question, nice try. And this one goes back, may go back as well. We'll see what who you name. Who is or was the best appellate advocate you've seen? And alternatively, or in addition, what was the best appellate argument you recall?
I was, you put about 10 names on the list. Ken Starr, Seth Waxman, Ted Olson, Paul Clement. Paul Clement was a clerk for Justice Scalia, 1995-96. Went out in private practice for a couple of years. Then he was the Deputy Solicitor General under Ted Olson, under Bush 43. When Ted left office, he moved out, Paul Clement did, became the Solicitor General of the United States at age 39. When a new team came into the White House, he went back to private practice. He now has argued, I believe, 64 cases in that court. He's about 43 years old. He argues with no notes. Now, you just got to say, he's good. I saw him argue 2 cases. He argued the Affordable Care Act cases, 2 back-to-back same day with no notes. You'd say, well, he must be some arrogant. No. He's the nicest man you've ever met in your life. A wonderful wife, 3 boys. They're sort of little stair steps. They're getting bigger now, but he gives them himself. He's taken pro bono cases, criminal cases. He's he's the epitome of what you say that there's a great lawyer, a great person, a great American, and he's a great appellate lawyer. I could go on. I can put 10 or 15 on that list. Now, the best case I ever saw argued, and this is hard, 1,700 cases. One of the best ones I ever saw, and don't get mad at me, was the BMI case. BMI was all male, and they wanted to keep it that way, and others, females, wanted to be in the work. We had the argument and so forth. Ted Olson argued for BMI, that they should have the option of being male only. We lost the case 7-1. Justice Thomas was recused. His son was going to BMI at the time. That was good. He probably wanted girls and women, but he recused himself. And the dissenter, I think, was Justice Scalia. I told Ted Olson, who happens to be a friend of my wife and myself, and his wife, that lady, her name is Lady. And I said, Ted, that was the best case you ever argued. He said, hello, I lost it 7-1. I said, that's my point. You go in there thinking, boy, this is going to be tough. And he made a real case for it. I think the second next best I ever saw was on the losing side of the Valor case, where people were wearing military medals that are unauthorized. We struck it down, but the counsel argued that was a Deputy Solicitor General, and he did a fantastic job. I thought he might pull it off. I decided when the case is over who I think is going to win. I circled it, and I sat there and I thought, well, this side's going to win. But that argument was so good, he convinced me I was wrong. So it's that kind of case. If you go with some are just slam dunks. Not often, but sometimes I can tell this one is 9-0. Not even that close. And you can tell, and you don't have to argue very hard. You get 30 minutes on each side. Several counsel have argued 7, 10, 11, and 12 minutes, I recall. We're in my little book. By the way, go to our website. It's pretty easy to find. Supreme Court of Mexico. And there's a guide for counsel in there. It's only about 15 pages long. It's everything I've learned by watching 1,700 cases. It's down and dirty. These are the do's and these are the don'ts. And one thing is, when you are arguing your case, and suddenly you look up and each justice has his or her arms folded, they're leaning back, counting the rosettes in the ceiling. That's a hint. They have finished. You should finish gracefully. And one time it was a rookie. He'd never been up there before, and he looked like a deer in the headlights. And nobody was asking any questions. And I thought, stop, you fool, stop. And he stopped. It was 7 minutes, and he won it 9-0. It's in my book. Read the little book. So it's hard to pick out any more that are great, but those are just a couple of them.
this tells you a little about the men as well. When we were preparing for this, I said that we would get questions in the two formats, and I said, you know, is there anything that's off? You know, would you like me to screen this in any way? And he said, absolutely not. You get the question, you ask me the question. So, gentlemen, here it comes. And you touched on it with your, I'm shuffling these as some of the answers so that they'll flow better. You just answered the question about BMI. With the perspective of your military career, what about the military culture seems to foment the disproportionate incidence of sexual assault?
Yeah, I read the papers just like you do, and it's troubling. And you can't sit where I sit or where you sit or where any reporter sits and figure it all out. Some factors. We've had 2 wars going on for a long time, and that causes tensions in the troops, the command. It's tough. These aren't movies. You realize that? These are not movies. They make movies about war. Those people are plastic people from Hollywood. Sorry, but they're made of plastic, so they won't get shot at. They get shot and they get back up. So you have those tensions that are involved. You have more women in the Army. You have more close living together, cramped into vehicles, cramped into small places to live. I mean, I think you have sexual assaults and violence in colleges and universities. I'm not saying that you should draw any conclusions about this, but I don't think it's normal. It's bad. I'm troubled by it. I think we all are. But I don't think the quick fix is to pass some law. I think I hate to say this, but I think better training, better education, but sometimes even that doesn't overcome some of the things that happen anyway. These aren't stupid people that do some of these things. So I guess you have to say, I'd like to have a military with no crime at all. I'd like to have a society with no crime at all. That's just not going to happen. And as lawyers, we know that. And we try to work to prevent them, to make them not happen. But you can get up and lecture to soldiers all day long. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do that. And they're going to slip and do it. And the only thing I know to do then is swift and accurate trials and punishment if warranted and not guilty if warranted. I mean, I've been prosecutor, defense attorney, and had all those things happen to my clients. And that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes in civilian life. So I think it's troubling. I think that the media bringing it to our attention is a good idea. I think we need to know about this. But I don't think there's any quick fix. I don't think there's any pill you give soldiers that's going to do it. We took malaria pills in Vietnam. Some soldiers wouldn't take them. Where I was I was only a major. I was a 30-year-old major running around over there. I was called the old man. But I made the sergeant major go around each of the captains and make them take the pills made you sick. That's why you don't want to take them, but you didn't get malaria. And they try all kind of tricks not to take them. Like he would stand with the sergeant major with a ball bat and make you take the pill and drink the water and take it down. But there's no pill to stop sexual harassment.
I guess I'd like to get your opinion. Same as you, I've been out for a while, but I've been asking the same question when I go to meetings and things. Have you actually seen anything that says it's disproportionate? Because it is an all-volunteer force, and so we're taking people in.
Yeah,
I know that there's a lot of unreported assaults in civilian society. Do you think it's disproportionate?
I just don't know. I want to say it's about the same, because these people are civilians and then later become soldiers and sailors. So it's not like they become different people. They're doing a different mission. You have this under-reporting and over-reporting. All these things go into it. But there's more media attention. There's more, we were talking earlier today. Everything today, somebody's taking a movie of whatever you're doing. And some of that's good. In this horrible situation in London the other day, the British soldier was butchered right out in public. They got pictures of these guys. You know, if we call the newspaper, it takes a little while to get there, right? But these are people going back, taking their pictures, and a lot of people say that's an invasion of privacy. I think it's good. I think it's the more sunshine we put on life, the better. So I don't know if it's disproportionate. I hope.
This is similar to a question that I indicated I might ask in my office, although this one doesn't give the qualifier of not anyone currently sitting. But it says, what justice was the most impressive?
Well, all 9 of them. And I've worked for 16. One that I did not work for, though, who just comes to mind as I think one of the greatest Americans that ever lived, was Justice Lewis Powell. Justice Powell never wanted to be on the Supreme Court. He was too old to be drafted into World War II. He was too old to have too many children. He joined anyway and served in the Army Air Corps. He was a intelligence officer in North Africa. Then he was in England. He worked for the OSS. You young people should know that was the predecessor to the CIA. They wrote the German code, the ultra-secret Enigma machine. The great Lewis Powell, who was a very frail, thin, timid-looking fellow. But he goes finally back to Richmond, Virginia after the war to practice law. He's gone to Washington and Lee. And so he was in Richmond practicing, and what came along, well, the American Bar Association needed leadership. So he did that for a year. And then they were going to desegregate the schools. Oh, Lewis Powell, come and head up the school board. We've got to do all this. Well, he did that. Bloodless desegregation of the schools. Lewis Powell could do things. He wanted to work for him. And then he said, okay, now I'm just going to practice law. Well, President Nixon had trouble getting a couple of justices, a couple of people, nominees confirmed. So he'd been asked twice to serve on the court. Lewis Powell twice was asked to serve on the court and declined. He wanted to stay in his beloved Richmond. After all he'd done for his country, that was enough, right? Well, the third time he was asked, a team went down and said, Lewis, your country needs you again. And he says, I'll do it. He came to the court and was very fractured. He cast the deciding vote in the Backey decision, the affirmative action case, which was a plurality opinion, by the way. People kind of forget that. It was plurality. And just a tip, if you go up and argue a case at the Supreme Court, and you cite from the lectern the plurality opinion, you better remind the court. Now, this was a plurality opinion only, because, as John Nance Garner, I think, said, it's not worth a bucket of warm spit. Did anyone say that? Somebody, you're the reporter, you tell me. Well, I think he said it. But it's just not, it doesn't stand for anything. But the Backey decision did, because it was the only decision on affirmative action. So Lewis Powell did that. He also was very kind to Justice O'Connor when she appeared as the first woman on the court. She says, he was very kind to show me the ropes and teach me this and teach me that. And they were the first two justices to dance in public. You didn't know that, did you? Well, I'm told anyway, I wasn't on the court. But here's Justice Powell. He was retired from the justices to dance. He stayed in the military and retired as a reserve officer as well in the Air Force. But here are all these great things he did. But he was the most modest person, never sought fame, never sought glory, never sought anything. Just a plain, simple fellow who just did his job. And he'd stop by now in my office. He was retired, and he'd just stop by and chat. And I really treasured those moments. And I asked him to sign a biography that was written by John Jeffries, the former dean of the Virginia Law School, one of his former law clerks. And the biography I recommend to anybody. It's just called Lewis Powell, the biography. But it's a fantastic story of a great man who isn't famous at all, but he should be.
Great. And you said earlier, this is my question, you said earlier that the Supreme Court was a pretty self-contained unit and has its own security. But I seem to recall hearing something about some security you might have provided at Bush before involving Geraldo Rivera.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Geraldo Rivera. He happened to be there that day, and I'll just say he's quite a character. He really has a big mustache.
And all I'm going to say about that.
Well, I will say one more thing about it. He mentioned Elvis Presley. Yes, I did serve with Elvis at Fort Hood, Texas. He was in basic training there, and I was in my basic training for ROTC. And I have a picture of Elvis and me standing with our hands on our hips, both of us with sort of a surly look on our lips. He's got that curled up lip. He's actually saying, thank you very much. And the next one, I have a picture of Colin Powell and me under the American flag. I was his JAG in the 101st Airborne Division. So he was a colonel, I was a lieutenant colonel, so I kept him out of the stockade for 2 years, and I taught Elvis everything he knows. We think I might be the only person who knows both of them.
And we can make some news here because General Suter did tell me on the way up to see the clinic that Elvis was still alive. It's true. So now this is an interesting question since you've announced your retirement for coming up here soon, August 31st. So this may be difficult in your current position. What keeps you up at night?
Nothing. But nothing. I've been happily married for 54 years. I married my college sweetheart. We're old fashioned. We met at Trinity University in Texas. I was a hick from Kentucky, and she was a glamorous woman from lots of places, all over Texas she lived. And we fell in love. We graduated, got married, and then started living together. And it seems to have worked. Yesterday was our 54th anniversary. And we're 2 children and 4 grandchildren. We love life. We love doing things together. She was a school teacher she's retired after 24 years. She taught kindergarten through college, all over the world. Taught in Bangkok, Thailand, Kentucky, Louisiana, Alaska. Teach, then not teach. It's a nice portable profession. You can move around with it. But she did all that teaching, and we look forward to the next day. We don't look back, and we don't whine about things. We love our family. We're very family oriented, and she loves those grandchildren. And so I do too. In fact, we have one just graduated from college, and he's now in postgraduate school. He's learning how to be a guide down in Montana. That's postgraduate school to me. That's what he wanted to do, and so he's in guide school. He's either a bear's chasing him or he's chasing a bear. Someplace in Montana, we can't wait till Sunday. We can't talk to him by cell phone because he's out in the woods someplace. So I'm not worried about anything.
The next, and if there are more, we've got about 10 more minutes, but the next one is kind of a compliment and a question. And when I read it out, I'm not, you can answer it if you want, but I'm sort of thinking I should ask Jeannie this question. What are your plans for retirement? I can't visualize you in a rocking chair.
No, we don't, well, one thing we don't want to have plans, what to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We want to take a little easy. We have a home in the country on a lake down near Fredericksburg, just 80 miles from home. She has her gardens, and we have a vegetable garden. We have boats. We like to fish, garden, and swim, and take it a little bit easy. But we have some other professional endeavors that we're looking at, but not 5 days a week, not even 3 days a week. Just take life just a little bit easier. I have some speaking engagements lined up, and that'll be fun. But we take one of those trips, then I don't have to go on a plane and fly right back to Washington to go back to work. And that'll be something we've never experienced. Look, I'm going to wake up on the 1st of September of this year. It'll be the first time that I've been unemployed in 51 years. But when I left the Army, I went to the court the next day. So maybe I'm entitled to it. I'm not entitled to it. Maybe I'll be okay. I'll be okay. And whatever she wants me to do, I'll do it.
Did you disagree with me?
I think that's right. We're going to have fun.
Yeah, that's why it works for 54 years. Esther, did you?
Yes, thanks.
Well, General Suter, I just want to bring some greetings on behalf of the entire 13,000 member Alumni Association of South Texas College of Law. I'm the immediate past president, and I would imagine, looking at retirement, I can give you advice that the immediate past clerk is probably a great job to have as well. So, greetings from all of us, and happy anniversary. I hope you enjoy that so much. I have specific greetings also. One of I recognize the photo, but the 9 folks that you helped induct into as members.
No, that was just last Monday.
It was. And for those of you who've heard a little bit of reference, Dean Suter arranged with his friend General Suter to have 9 of our alumni join the Supreme Court, become members, and get sworn in on a wonderful trip. And now the question, who is going to do this for my class next year?
My replacement, the 20th clerk of the court, they advertised for the position. A number of people applied. I specifically did not want to have anything to do with picking myself a successor. I learned that in the Army. Trying to hang on, that gives the appearance of hanging on. And so I had nothing to do with it. And they'll pick a better person than me, I'm sure. And he or she will do a fantastic job. I know if I can help in any way, I'll be glad to do it. But I'm sure not going to get in anybody's way. But I'll assure you this: any drawer you open in my office there'll be no snakes crawling down it. I'm leaving it clean as can be. We'll end our term really in June, the last opinions, but things are pretty hectic. In July and August, things slow down, so we have plenty of time to get things ready. And I have a wonderful administrative assistant who was with me in the Army, came over to the court, has a lot of service, and she's going to stay one more month to break in the new clerk. These are the kind of people that work for the federal government that people don't know about. She's ready to retire right now, but she's going to stay one more month, break the new clerk in, and then the new clerk will be able to select his administrative assistant. I won't try to pick someone for him or her. So it's a very orderly process. Again, there's that discipline and tradition that we have there.
Well, we would appreciate if you could leave a note, good things about South Texas College of Law. I'll be up here next year.
I'll tell you what, their dean is very well wired in Washington. He'll get it done. Don't worry about this guy.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the vote.
That Jay was a cheerleader in college, am I right? Yes. Good, and she's still cheerleading for South Texas College of Law, which we appreciate very much. But you kind of stole one of my questions. That, no, I was going to ask you if you plan to either do you plan to leave any note inside that desk at all for reference toward the person who will follow you, or even just the offer that you be on call to help with the transition?
Oh, sure. But I don't think anyone's, I mean, some things I'm just going to hate to see end. For instance, for years, I have every summer a Trinity University student serve as one of my interns. Something you can do for your school. And Trinity meant a lot to Jeannie and me, and we still support the school very much. I'm on the board of visitors there, along with Senator Cornyn, another Trinity boy. And so that would just, somebody else gets to do it for their school. You can't hang on, you just can't keep things going, you gotta walk away. And the same for you graduates of this school, you walk away, but one thing you do once a year or more often, you write a check. Right, first it'll be a small check. If you do it every year, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because you gotta support your school. You gotta do it. Then you'll feel good about it.
I have one more question, but I don't want to preempt it. Does anyone want to ask a question?
Don't be shy.
And you'll recognize, this will be a little bit of a surprise maybe, but you'll recognize it. Is there any question that I should have asked you, wish I would have asked you, but I didn't, about the court or anything you'd like to tell us about the court that I didn't ask?
Well, I guess that the court is misunderstood so many times that it's a political entity, because when it's reported on, I'm not picking on the reporters themselves, I'm just saying comments that are made about the court, it's people try to sometimes inject politics into it. They'll say Justice X appointed by, President Clinton did so and so. What difference does it make who appointed? It makes none whatsoever. It just sort of perpetuates things, I think, when you say that. Or they'll say the same old court, 5 Republican appointees and 4 Democrats. Look, 40% of our opinions are unanimous. Every term. 40 is a tall part. Sometimes it's higher. Term before last, I think it was, the recent term, 63% were either unanimous or 8-1. There's a lot of getting along together out there. They're getting along, and they vote the way they see the case. They're good friends. They're professionals. And they get the job done. So I just don't see this. People say it's divisive and it does this and this. Some people are result-oriented. If they don't like the result, it's a bad decision. Well, something I won't say which case, but a lawyer told me one time she was just all angry about the decision. She said it was the worst decision the Supreme Court ever issued. And I thought, oh, please. But I was very nice to her. In my mind, I thought, worse than Dred Scott? I mean, really? But I'm a nice guy. I didn't say that. Well, I then asked her, I said, by the way, with all due respect, did you read the opinion? She said, no. You have a constitutional right to remain ignorant. I didn't tell her that either. I'm a nice guy. But they're just, if their side lost, they just can't take it if the court's wrong. They would say, no, well, the court was right on that case. People say to me, was that opinion right? I said, yes, absolutely. What about the dissent? Well, it was right too. So I get along. So no questions asked. I just wish more people knew more about the court and did more studying of it. Along those lines, a lot of teachers, both from high school, college, through law school, bring students to that court, and we give them lectures in the courtroom, do this and that. The justices spend an enormous amount of time speaking to groups. You know, a group like this. I mean, the Chief Justice is coming here, right?
He's going to Providence on the.
Well, probably he's doing that. The Chief Justice Ring was visiting this court. I mean, they get out. They are doing things and trying. And they're not getting out to get votes. I mean, after all, they are appointed for drafters of the Constitution do a pretty good job on it. So they're out there because they want to see what's going on, talk to you. So I just wish people understood the court a little bit better. Yes, ma'am.
Are you gonna write a book?
Maybe, but it won't be the kind of book that you want to read. It'll be probably incredibly boring, but it'll be filled with little stories. My wife always says, Bill, you tell these stories, but they're true stories. I didn't even tell anything, but they're stories of things that happened, and I've kept notes. It would never be the kind of book you're thinking of. The Brethren, that sort of thing, the closed chamber, no. I would never, ever do that. I would never violate a confidence. We just don't do that up there. People say, how do they keep all those secrets? I mean, you have to say the other two branches of government, and we were in that other branch, we know. I mean, they have offices that specialize in leaks. I mean, you trial balloons, you know what those kind of things are. When an opinion is ready, it's handed down. One quick example. When Justice O'Connor announced her retirement in June 2005, her husband was very ill with Alzheimer's disease. He was a former Army JAG, by the way, many years ago. He subsequently passed away. She sold her house in Maryland and moved back to Arizona. Okay? President Bush nominated young Judge John Roberts to take her place, which means he would be the junior justice, taking notes at the conference, fetching coffee, those kind of things, which a junior justice has to do, because no one's in there in conference with her. But what happened? Before his hearing started in September, Chief Justice Rehnquist died. The president then nominated John Roberts to be the chief. So instead of being in the number 9, he's in the center, number 1. Timing's everything. You got a lawyer here, see? Timing is everything. So what happened? Now we're bumping up against the first Monday in October. We're only with 8 justices. Justice O'Connor, whose retirement paper said, I retire effective the date my successor is confirmed. She's still on that court. You might need her. She came back to Washington on her own nickel. She had to rent an apartment, leave her husband of many years, her beloved husband, in Arizona, who was ill, cared for, of course. This was stressful. Talk about stress. But not on her. She's a tough one, let me tell you, and a good one. A great wife, a mother, a jurist, and a great person. I admire her greatly. She came back and took her position on the court and sat from September 2005 till January 2006. And then a few days later, Justice Alito was confirmed and he came to the bench. The last day she sat, January 23rd, 2006, we handed down an opinion. The opinion dealt with bankruptcy and the sovereign immunity of the state. I see eyes closing all over. Yeah, pretty boring stuff, right? The vote was 5-4. She was in the majority. All one of the dissenters had to do was say, my opinion's not ready yet. Can't issue the opinion. Justice O'Connor leaves, Justice Alito comes on board. We re-argue the case. And Justice Alito votes on this side. And the 5-4 goes the other way. They did not do that. They don't do that. I'm just telling you, the opinion was ready to be handed down. It was 5-4, you hand it down. You know, Americans should know these kind of things that happen. We should run our other branches of government the same way. I know you run the school that way. That's just the way things ought to be. But again, it's not known. And again, I admire her greatly too. She's a great jurist and a very fine woman. You know, she's sitting on circuits all the time. And I had lunch with her just last week at the court picnic, and she's all mad at me because we're going fly fishing in Wyoming in August, and she wants to go with us. She's sitting on a case subway. I think she's sat on 11 of the 13 circuits. She's a workhorse, let me tell you. She's not as young as she might think. But a great American. I'm exalted her.
I just want to say thank you, Pete, for coming down. Thank you, Bill, for thank you for time for us. And I would like to say, you complimented a lot of people here tonight, but you are a good and a great man and a kind man. I don't know anybody who needs as kind as this man. please join me in thanking